to the first Q&A with Principal Rodney Arthur, our new principal. We're really happy to be here. This is the middle school version. There's actually going to be a high school version as well next week, so if any of you have high school students, please spread the word and come back. I'm Sue Wuornos. I am co-chair of the PTA Middle School Committee with Christine Sanzillo, my co-chair. I have an 8th grader here and Christine has a 6th grader. So we're as interested in the answers to these questions as all of you. As you may know, I'm hoping that you saw that we crowdsourced questions for this. I know there's been a lot of questions for Mr. Arthur, and so we thought we only have 1 hour. So in order to try to get the frequently asked questions addressed, we looked at everything and and found the ones that are the most often asked. And so we'll focus on those tonight. If you do have additional questions that don't get addressed, you can email us at tuckahoeptams@gmail.com, and then we will field the questions over to Mr. Arthur, and in one of his future newsletters, the weekly newsletters that have been going out, he's going to address certain questions in those, and that way, hopefully throughout the course of the year, everybody's questions can be answered. So as you can see, we have a little bit of an Oprah-style format. It's not going to be any Harry and Meghan bombshells tonight, sorry, but I do think that this is going to be a very informative and useful conversation, despite not trashing the royal family. The session is being recorded, and so it will be sent out. It's not live streamed, but the recording is going to be sent out in the weekly newsletter. So if any parents are upset that they couldn't make it tonight, just let them know there will be a recording. Probably not this weekend's edition because it's already Thursday night, but we're going to send it out very soon, so they'll be able to have access to it. So, the last thing I wanted to mention in terms of housekeeping, if this newsletter that I'm talking about, you don't know what I'm talking about, please also email us at tuckahoeptams@gmail.com. We will make sure that you're added to the list. There are a few people we're hearing are not receiving these weekly updates, and so if you are one of them, or if you know somebody who's like, I haven't received it, please let us know so we can get that over to Mr. Arthur's office and he can make sure that you're getting those. So I think that's everything I wanted to say for opening, so let's get started. So Mr. Arthur, first question is, what has impressed you most so far about Tuckahoe Middle School?
Well, thank you, Susan. First of all, I want to thank the PTA for their collaboration, their support of our scholars, and certainly our faculty and staff welcoming me, helping me during the transition period. That has been quite special for me. As I've noted certainly in my weekly bulletin, I'm a dad first. So I have 4 children. My youngest is in high school, and it is so refreshing for me to come in and see our scholars. So what impressed me the most? Our students by far, and certainly the work and dedication of our faculty and staff. I get to see them each and every day. I get to see the joyful looks of our students when they come in. It was a wonderful opportunity for me to see students when they're coming into the building looking happy, right? How many communities have students actually riding their bikes into school, right? Coming into the building. And we have an environment where the students are so caring, right? And they demonstrate that whether or not they're saying hello to a staff member or saying hello to a friend, just observing their interactions. I'm a very observant person, and that really has impressed me the most. Just the kind, good-hearted nature of our students, and like I said, just the commitment of our faculty. I mean, they know our children. Even our high school teachers, they know many of our students, right, who even at the elementary school because of siblings or what have you. So that's been really refreshing for me to see. So that has impressed me the most.
Awesome, that's great to hear. I mentioned the newsletter a minute ago, obviously. A lot of us have noticed it's a little long, but it's also, I noticed that there's things both from the middle school and the high school.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about the philosophy of sharing everything each
Sure.
week?
And having the experience of supervising a middle school and a high school in my previous employment, I felt it was very important for me to take the time to really memorialize the great things that are happening. One of the things I see as my role as principal is really sharing out, having transparent communication with parents, making sure they know the great things that are occurring in our learning environment. So many of our parents are also teachers, right? So they speak that same language, but we have parents that really care and want to know what's happening in our schools. So as a parent myself who want that same information from my children's school, I felt really compelled to really provide that information. Now, the reason why I sent out one email containing, information for middle school and high school, I think it's very important for the the middle school parents to know exactly what's happening in the high school, because we do know that some of our families, sometimes they do leave and instead of attending high school here. So trying to front end load information for families so they can see the great things that are happening at the high school, so they can have a clear understanding that, maybe there's some things that are happening here that I want to keep my child here for, right? Maybe there's some things I didn't know, but now I do know. I don't believe that we've been a school or middle school, high school where we shared enough of the great things that are happening. And also you've noticed in some of my newsletters, including information about guidance. Right. So if I'm a parent of a 7th or an 8th grader, or even a 6th grader, and getting a brochure of what's happening in guidance, what to expect, 10th grade, it at least allows me to see what to expect so I can really compare and make some decisions, right, having the right information. So I really want to get information out to all the families. I apologize for it being long, but I can say to you, it's a labor of love, and it takes me hours to put that together, but I do it because I think it's important for parents to know what's happening in our community.
Yeah. All right, well, that's great. That's really good to know, and I think that people can skim through the parts that may not be pertaining to them as much, but I can say also that I like seeing the things from the high school, just because my kids are not there yet. Let's see. So let's say you have a kid as early as 6th grade. How are students challenged once teachers have determined that they can perform at a higher level?
Well, one of the things that, first of all, I've been a teacher at the elementary, middle school, and high school level, and an administrator as well. So, having had that broad experience, one of the things coming in is, I visit classrooms on a daily basis because I try to get a clear sense of, what's occurring in the building, where I need to help teachers, where we need to lead professional development. And our teachers do a phenomenal job. They do. I'm quite impressed with the level of engagement that I've observed middle school and high school. That being said, student engagement is our primary focus because everything that a teacher does, no matter if it's professional development, workshop, it doesn't matter. Everything leads to student engagement. So to answer your question directly, it is my expectation, right, that teachers are scaffolding information to meet students where they are and to challenge them, right? That is my expectation. That's what I've communicated. We provide professional development on that. So if a student is performing at a high level, it is my expectation that the teachers are meeting them where they are and challenging them accordingly. That is my expectation. I know we're talking about middle school, but for the high school, I'll just share with you. So recently I did a data dive with some of our high school teachers just yesterday, and I met with all of the English teachers so they can have a clear understanding of where we are in terms of performance for regions and what is everyone's responsibility, so we have some vertical alignment. Same conversations are happening with our middle school teachers as well, because we need to know exactly what students are expected to achieve, so we can take a backwards design approach and make sure that they're meeting each of these benchmarks. So sorry for the long-winded response, but the bottom line is that it is my expectation that teachers, by supplementing, by scaffolding, meeting students where they are, and getting them to feel like they're being challenged, whether or not it's the wording of the questions, right? So that's my expectation, and that's some of the work that we're doing.
Okay, terrific. In terms of foreign language, are there any plans to introduce foreign language in grade 6 rather than waiting till grade 7?
So there are a number of questions, and so I apologize in advance if I sound a little bit repetitive. There are a number of questions that have some staffing implications. And as you may know, that we do operate under a 2% cap. So there are some constraints to look at staffing, but I can share with you that whether or not it's the board, the superintendent, we're looking to be very competitive. So there have been some conversations, right? And we're looking at the various priorities to look at where do we start first. We have our strategic plan that is pretty robust and pretty comprehensive. So we want to make sure that all of our efforts are going in towards supporting the strategic plan. So specifically, that's one of several priorities that we've talked about and are considering.
Okay, great. And as an extension to that question, in those conversations, are there any additional language offerings that could potentially be considered in addition to Spanish and Italian?
Likewise, we've had conversations about that. Certainly, we've had conversations about that because we'll really like to consider some additional world languages so we can have our students be even more competitive.
Right.
So that's part of that conversation that we've been having.
Great. What about, let's see, does your team have plans to begin a level of athletic competition in grade 6, club teams or intramurals? Again, rather than waiting till 7th grade where they can start modified, is there anything planned for grade 6?
So New York State Education Department sort of confines us in terms of when we can begin sports at the middle school level. So that's why it starts at the 7th grade level. But in addition to that, in our community, there are a number of local teams, and many of our students from 6th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade on down are part of these local teams. So, that becomes something that we have to consider also, but we are confined by New York State Education Department when students can actually participate in athletics.
Okay, that does make sense. How are students' executive functioning skills supported and developed across a continuum starting in grade 6?
Sure. So what I would share with you is being a small community gives us a lot of advantages. Going into classrooms and seeing how teachers are working with students. So to answer your questions, the teachers embed many executive functioning strategies, whether or not it's helping students to get organized, whether or not it's helping students with test-taking strategies. They embed that within their classrooms. The unique thing that we also have is we have congruence. So teachers in the middle school do meet on teams and they do discuss students. I participate on many of those teams. My background is also in special education, so I've done a lot of work with multi-tier systems and supports. So we have conversations about what we call tier 1 interventions. These are interventions that teachers across the board in the general education classrooms are applying. Many of those strategies that we do talk about also include or fall under the umbrella of executive functioning weaknesses or executive functioning strategies to use to help students.
Okay. In terms of time management and things like that.
That is correct.
Okay.
And if I could just add to that,
Yeah.
We have our school counselor who also works with students. So we try to take a tiered approach. We also have sometimes our psychologists or even administrators working with students. Presently, we are operating using the Rethink, which is done at Cottle. So we've launched that this year. And there are elements of that that also address executive functioning, things related to executive functioning. So again, the classroom teachers really embed such strategies in their practices, and being a part of a congruence team, they're able to talk about, here's some strategy you need to use universally. Just continuing that, one of the things that we're launching this year from 6th through 12th grade is something called 13 command terms. These are terms such as identify, analyze, or what have you, that we're rolling out across the board. These are high impact terms. These are terms from working in an international baccalaureate program we use to make sure our students can really unpack various assessments, right, and be able to generalize and apply these terms. So we're actually launching that here. We're starting next week in our English classes. So you're going to hear your scholars talking about words like identify. What does it mean? What does it look like?
School.
Absolutely. It's 6 through 12.
Right.
But what does that identify mean in math? What does it mean in English? What does it mean in social studies? Right? And having students being able to, apply those words themselves. So that's one of the things that we're launching. In addition to that, we're looking at launching a literacy initiative across the board. That's also going to be a 6-12 building-wide initiative. So there's some initiatives that we're looking at launching 6 through 12. So it doesn't matter what content area a child is in or what grade, they're getting certain skills that they need.
Okay, in terms of literacy, can you talk a little bit more about that? Who
Sure.
is that geared towards?
Sure. It's geared to all of our students. So for example, helping students understand how to preview a text, helping students understand how to annotate and what does that mean? What does it look like? Helping students understand to chunk information, right? That's very important, especially for our students who are reading, some pretty complex texts, right? So these are strategies that we'll be rolling out 6 through 12 because, even on the college campus, we annotate our texts all the time, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that our students, our scholars, really have skills, what we call lifelong skills, that they will be able to apply.
Okay, great. What are the current advanced course offerings for ninth graders, just so those of us who have kids obviously in the middle school, and as we look towards high school, what can we expect from ninth grade?
Sure, great question. So right now we are reviewing a number of our courses in the ninth grade, high school in general. We're looking at our courses, looking at the sequence of courses, looking at courses that we offer relative to what's offered in other districts. That's not only core academic courses, but also elective courses. So right now in the ninth grade, we launched this year AP Environmental Science. All right, so that was a pilot course that we offered. We are continuing to offer it for next year. And that's one of our biggest launches for the current year. We are exploring a few other courses, and this is the point in the time where we start to review that so we can start to, prepare our request for budget implication. So there are some additional, I don't want to be premature in saying that we're definitely going to, because we're at the process where we're really reviewing, evaluating, and making sure that we can support it through the budget process.
Okay. All right, and then in terms of the specific current advanced courses in ninth grade, do you know what those are?
So the AP Environmental Science is definitely one of the new ones that we've offered. So we have an 8th period day. So our high school students, especially in the ninth grade, their day is pretty well defined in terms of which courses they have to take to meet graduation requirement. So if our students this year in the 8th grade, we've launched biology, right? So in the ninth grade, most of our 8th graders have the biology credit, have the course credit. So they're taking AP Environmental Science, they may be taking Earth Science we did not offer this year, but we're considering order for next year. They're taking either in math, they could be taking certainly they took algebra in the 8th grade, so they'll be taking from geometry in the 8th grade. Some of them may be taking application geometry. Some students are in global, they're taking global 1. Let's see. Those are the core.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit more, I don't want to say constricted, but pretty well defined for students. What we're looking to do is see what other courses we can add, and that's what we evaluate right now for the ninth grade. As students move up to the 10th, 11th, and 12th, we have a little bit more flexibility in terms of the AP courses that we offer, and there are a lot more that we've offered this year than we have in previous years.
Oh, okay. Well, can you tell a couple of the other ones for 10th, 11th, 12th again, just for us to know what's coming for the high school?
Sure. So we have AP Bio, we have AP Chemistry, we have AP Stats. We have a number of AP courses that we've offered.
Great.
Some of those courses presently is offered in the 11th grade. We're looking and meeting and considering offering some of those courses in our 10th grade.
Okay.
So these are conversations that we're having now to really challenge our students and really prepare them for life beyond Tuckahoe.
Excellent, excellent. Life beyond Tuckahoe.
Absolutely.
What's that?
if I can just add, one of the things that if you heard my presentation to the board on Monday, one of the things that we're engaging in is a discussion about what is the portrait of a graduate of the Tuckahoe schools. We're looking at some of the work from the World Economic Forum and looking at disposition skills that are required in the workforce. Skills such as, looking at self-awareness, right? You may not necessarily think about that from a school lens, but how do we teach self-awareness, right? How do we teach AI? AI is coming on big now, right? Just understanding data, understanding research. So there are a number of skills, dispositions that the World Economic Forum say, coming into the workforce, these are skills that are needed. Colleges, universities, high schools, you need to start preparing your students, your scholars, to have these skills. So we're starting to look at that and think about what do we want our graduates, what skills do they need to possess? So we're looking at that from a vertical lens, right? And these are conversations that we're starting to have, putting together a pretty robust plan for next year, because that also ties into our strategic plan. I say all that to say, we have to evaluate the courses that we are presenting to students to help us meet these objectives.
Right, okay. let's see, would you consider implementing a program where students are assigned an advisor that they could meet with from time to time throughout middle school?
So I think you're referring to an advisory period. It's a conversation that we've had. Again, it comes back to budgeting, right? We have an 8-period day.
Yeah.
There are a number of schools that have a 9th-period day, so we have to consider that element and how that would impact. So we have had some conversations not only about an advisory at the middle school level, but also possibly at the high school level. So these are conversations that we're having to look and see what is the best way forward so we can support our students so they can do well.
Okay.
So these are conversations that we're having among other areas that we need to consider.
Right, and what about the idea of adding a homeroom to the schedule where
Sure.
the kids could really have that place, that one teacher that they really get to know over time?
Sure. I mean, great question. So right now we have a 42-minute period. So, when you look at adding a homeroom, you start pulling away from instructional time. So, looking at the question, having some conversation with my leadership team, is something that we have talked about, but we also want to find that balance of if we have a homeroom, what are we willing to give up? Are we willing to cut back on the minutes of each of our periods? All right, so that's a conversation that would have to involve the Board of Education, the superintendent of schools. So it's a much broader conversation.
Okay. So let's shift over to discipline. This question comes from a parent who says, I've heard there is no detention or no consequences, and so students who act out in class there aren't consequences for acting out. So can you talk a little bit about the discipline process? Just,
Sure.
What happens when a child misbehaves?
Sure. Well, we have a progressive approach to discipline, if you would, right? So, to answer your question flat out, students are assigned detention. I had a student in my office until 5 o'clock today.
Okay, so there is detention.
There is detention.
Okay. And it's
okay?
not always in your office, I hope.
No, but it becomes an opportunity also to mentor a student,
Sure.
right? So detention is something that happens.
Okay.
So, but what happens depending on the infraction, we try to make it teachable moments. We try to use somewhat of a restorative approach so students can understand how their actions impact our learning environment. And we have students serve lunch detention, generally, which is our approach. Again, depending on what the infraction is. In some cases, they serve after school detention. The situation is reoccurring. We bring parents in, and if need be, if it's something that's really serious, we do actually suspend. But the fact is, we try to avoid it as much as we can, but we do follow our code of conduct and we do implement it, and we try to make sure the students understand where they go wrong and how they can learn from those experiences.
Okay, and for detention, where does it actually take place if it's not in your office? Is there a certain room?
It would be in the main
lunchtime?
office.
Okay.
Sometimes it can be a little scary come to the principal's office,
Sure.
right? So it definitely the main office. So
Okay.
either one of my assistant principals or me could be in our conference room. So so there is detention.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the lockers and the backpacks. So during COVID, lockers had to be removed so kids weren't kind of convening in that area. But they got used to wearing their backpacks and carrying all their stuff around. And even though there are lockers now, this mom says, my children have told me that if they go to their lockers when they arrive at school, they're told they're not allowed to be in the hallway. And so they sort of said, I'm not going to bother with my locker. I'll just carry my stuff like I have been. But is there a way to kind of create more of a culture of visiting the locker and having the trust to visit a locker?
So just going back to your initial question, one of the unique things about our community, our learning community, is the trusting atmosphere that exists. That's one of the things that jump out to me, that students are not required to receive a pass to go to the bathroom. There's an honor system. They go to the bathroom, or if they need to go get something from their locker, there's that honor system, which for me, that was a very difficult thing to adjust to.
Okay. Yeah.
No passes, what do you mean, right? So I had to come in and adjust to our environment, recognizing the relationship our teachers have with our scholars. So there is that trust system. And from the orientation, the 6th grade orientation that we had, right, one of the components of that orientation was having students do their locker setup,
Right.
So students are encouraged to use the lockers. I've never heard of a teacher saying to a student they could not go to the locker unless it's a situation where a student may have come in late, right? And we want them to get to class so they're not losing out on more instructional time. Get to your locker at a different point, but let's get you to class. That we have done for sure. So students go to the locker throughout the periods.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have not seen that as a concern, but I can just tell you that, you know, I'm always in a hall and I see our middle school students at their lockers. You know, I've always come from an approach where you go to your locker 3 times a day. You know, when you first come in, during lunch and after school. That is not something that we've implemented here with the honor system, and our students really shown responsibility, so there hasn't been a need for us to do that. But it's something that we evaluate, we monitor.
Yeah. I think there's sometimes a concern about the weight of the backpacks, right?
Totally agree.
When we're carrying a lot of stuff around.
So I know the teachers encourage students to use their lockers. Now, some students choose not to, but again, I know it's an emphasis coming from our teachers encouraging them to use their lockers. So, you know, I'll bring it back to the middle school teachers and find a way to make sure it's more of a requirement, you know, but again, we try to give students choice. I think giving students choice is very, very important.
Definitely. Talking about dress code, you sent out a couple of weeks ago the update to the dress code, and what prompted that?
So there were some concerns that was expressed that the dress code was sort of out of date. So we reviewed it from the superintendent level to the board, and there was some decisions made that we need to update the dress code to be more current, right, and which what was done. So it was a discussion that was held at multiple levels. So based on the changes that were made, we sent out the revised dress code.
Okay, there was the kids have been talking generally about the rule against wearing slides or Crocs or things like that. And then from the other perspective, there was something about, there was a rule about no bare midriffs for the girls, but that was removed from the dress code. Is there any, you know, any reason for that? Is that, again, modernizing, so it's maybe not female specific, or can you elaborate a little bit more on the updates?
I think some of the concerns that came to our attention is that, let me first say, I have 3 daughters. Right, but this is not about my opinion or my relationship with my daughters, but the fact it was brought to our attention that there was too much of attention on, as far as the dress code is concerned, on calling attention to the way young ladies dress, right, making them feel uncomfortable. Right, so we can't ignore that. You know, we need to make sure that every student feel physically and emotionally safe. So if there are individuals who were, you know, let's use the word body shaming, right? That was a concern. So again, the dress code was reviewed, there were conversations, and based on the review, there was a need that was felt to update the dress code to ensure that students feel physically and emotionally safe.
Okay, and then talk a little bit about the footwear. I know you've mentioned it before, about safety issues.
Sure, well, you know, the situation is we have a number of students that wear flip-flops, sliders, and you know, when we're required to do a number of drills as per New York State Education Department. We have students wearing flip-flops and exiting the building and trying to do it expeditiously. You know, I've been involved in a situation where a student having a flip-flop, they tripped, they sprained their ankle trying to leave with flip-flop because there's no backing, right? So it's not secure. So we have been asking students to, you know, not wear flip-flops. They can wear Crocs. Crocs is acceptable, put them in sports mode. But the fact is, you know, but, you know, the fact is we're trying to get students to understand that flip-flops is a safety concern. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. Okay, so this next one, not this year, but last year, my children told me that fights in the hallway were commonplace, not only between boys, but between girls. How are fights handled, and are they handled equally, whether it's boys fighting versus girls fighting?
I mean, we're required to. And, you know, I will share with you, again, one of the refreshing things coming in, speaking to my assistant principals, as I understand, there has not been a physical fight in school in over 5 years, all right? So I was not here, but that's something that I did look into, and there has not been a physical fight in over 5 years at our building. So have there been arguments? Absolutely. Have there been arguments this year? Absolutely. Right? And we we've pulled students in, got parents in, spoken to students, set expectations, right? We've definitely been directly involved in that because we're preparing our students for, life beyond high school, right? And how do you deal with conflict? So we try to coach them, in that regard. I can tell you there's some parents who have a very different point of view. No, don't speak to my child. Nope. I tell my child what to do. We've had some of those, interactions with parents. And as principal, I respectfully disagree. Here you're entrusting us with your child's safety. So we have a responsibility for the safety of every single student, every staff member. You may not agree with us, but here we do have to determine what's the best way to keep our students safe. We are confined by our code of conduct, but we also use professional judgment. So again, like I said, not all parents agree with how we may handle things, and this is not, localized to Tuckahoe. That's in all school districts, right? But the bottom line is we make sure we approach things consistent with our code of conduct, and we make sure that we treat our students like they're our own. That's the bottom line.
Okay, that's good. Let's see. Why are clubs only held during school and not after school? It's, outside of athletics, there seems to be little activity for kids after school.
Well, there are a couple of things that play into that. As you mentioned, there are a large number of our students who are involved in athletics. I think it's over 60%, if I'm not mistaken, that are involved in athletics. Athletics starts after school. On top of that, we have our teachers are required to provide extra help after school, right? So that plays into it as well. So it makes it a little bit more challenging when students are required to provide extra help after school. There are many of our teachers who also involve in coaching, right? So there are some competing priorities. So most of our clubs meet during the day. There are a few clubs that they meet after school. Mr. Charles Duchateau is involved with students after school. Miss Edie Reed. There are a number of clubs that do meet with students after school. But like I said, there are some competing priorities. So we just want to make sure that our focus is making sure that, what we offer students is something that we can maintain and do consistently and do it with fidelity. Right,
sure. In terms of curriculum and electives, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I think, but one of the parents did ask, this was after our question deadline, but she asked about health. And I think that she's a sixth grade mom, so she may not be aware of how the electives are set up, where kids do get health, but her child may not have health currently.
Correct.
So is there, some...
There's a 10-week rotation.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So every 10 weeks. So right now we're in let me back for a minute. There are 40 weeks in the school year. So every 10 weeks, student may have a new elective. That also is contingent on whether or not a student may have, an academic intervention support service class. So the number of factors that may play into that. But again, our students have a 10-week rotation. So that child may not get health until the fourth marking period.
Okay. And in health, do they address puberty? That was actually her specific question, is that, she had mentioned another school district sort of separates the boys and girls. I don't know that we do that here, but... Not
to my knowledge, something I would look into. Yeah. Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And so, speaking of the academic intervention services, can you also explain how that works, where if somebody does need AIS, then they don't go to their elective? Is that correct?
That can be the case.
Yeah.
So, if a child has not performed well, let me back for a minute. New York State has given us a flexibility to look at multiple measures in determining who should have academic intervention services. So, we use multiple measures to make that determination. So we do look at students' state assessment scores. We also look at the administration of iReady. And we also get input from the classroom teacher, because sometimes students are not good test takers, right? So we look at those measures, and there's some students who may have done well on a state assessment, relatively well on, again, iReady, but there's certain skills that the teachers are seeing that the child may be lacking, and they may be recommended for AIS services. Maybe a shorter period, right, than some other students. So some students may be in AIS maybe just for 10 weeks, some maybe for 20 weeks, some for 30, and some for 40. It all depends on the student's needs.
Okay. And in terms of social media education, are there any, is there any part of the curriculum or anything that goes on where the kids are instructed about internet safety, social media, conduct, things like that?
Sure. So we actually, working with Dr. Goodman, we actually have reached out to a couple of organizations, and we're looking to do an assembly 6 through 12, certainly at different periods, where we're going to cover issues related to what I call issues related to social media. One workshop that I know we had looked at is the pitfalls of social media. So it is something that's coming up and that we're going to be addressing. Likewise, there's a workshop that we're looking to try to bring in to just, give students some context about some of the issues that are happening in the Middle East and helping them make healthy and safe choices. So there are a few things that we are planning.
Okay, and those are the assemblies that you mentioned. Are there any other assemblies that are being considered for this year?
Yes, they are. Do I know specifically what some of them are right now? Not yet. We do have a few things that we are considering, but we want to balance that with classroom instructional time as well, right? And so many of our teachers now want to start looking at extending students' learning with trips. So we do definitely want to balance that instructional time. So there are going to be some other assemblies, such as when we start looking at our high school students in particular, looking at course offerings. We're going to consider looking at having an assembly for some of our 8th grade students, looking at some of our course offerings. So there are a number of things that we're looking to consider, but we want to be very sensitive in terms of how much time students are being lost out of the classroom.
Right.
Yep.
And so you also did mention field trips. It was exciting to get the email the other day for the 8th grade trip to DC.
That's correct.
Last year it was great that both 7th and 8th got to go to Boston.
Correct.
Can you, are there other, and there were boundless adventures, obviously 6th, 7th, and 8th. Are there other, one-day field trips, or even just, like the, not like an overnight, but are there other field trips that are being considered?
Sure. So one of the mandates or requests that have come from the Board of Education is that we really get back out to, extending students' learning, beyond the building. So that is something that we're pushing, more teacher-led, right? So there are teachers who've submitted some trip requests recently that I've signed off on. So we're really trying to get the teachers to look at how they can extend the students' learning. How can we extend that curriculum outside of the classroom? So that is more teacher-generated, and we're supporting those requests.
Okay, that's great. Any updates on the cell phone policy?
So, we've had a few parents who've brought it to our attention, why do we permit or allow middle school students to have cell phones? Some parents thought that I came in and I changed the policy. Did not. I don't make policy. Only the Board of Education makes policy. We make a practice, or we can adopt a practice. So that was something that I inherited. So it's something that we've been evaluating throughout the year. We're 2 months in. It's something that we continue to evaluate, and we're definitely going to be making some decisions about cellular phones in general at the middle school level for the upcoming school year.
Okay, great. And the current policy is no phones during class for any of the middle school, is that right?
For middle school and high school.
Okay.
Providing that a teacher, sometimes the teachers may allow a student to use the phone for something educational. They may allow the students to use the phone to listen to some music so they can, have some opportunity to concentrate. That happens in art quite a bit, right? So there's some teacher discretion that we allow for that, right? So, and that's a conversation we've had with teachers also. I just yesterday at our faculty meeting, I shared with teachers, please be mindful, we're one-to-one districts, many of you are using, Chromebooks, but walking the building, sometimes I see a student may have a phone, right? And the screen is blocking the teacher's vision, right? So there's some of that that's going on more in the high school, but at the middle school level, again, some teachers may incorporate a cell phone for a learning activity, but going into the middle school classes, I don't see cell phones out in the class. In the cafeteria, we've permitted that. We haven't heard any issues relating to, recordings, inappropriate recordings. But again, it's something that we do monitor. one of the concerns that a sixth grade parent or two sixth grade parents brought up is that, they have made the decision that they do not want their child to have a cell phone out or a cell phone in school. And the peer pressure of seeing their friends having a cell phone out, it's a bit challenging. Understood, respect that. My personal belief, what I've done as a parent, my children did not receive a cell phone until they graduate from middle school. That was my practice. I can't impose what my person believes on in a school practice. That's just not the way things go.
Right.
But as a team, as an administrative team, as a faculty, we're evaluating, how students, that issue, right? And we will be making some decisions next year as it relates to cellular phones and our student population. We've done some research. We know that Eastchester does not permit cell phones at the middle school level. So we've done our research also. So we are reflecting and considering what we need to do for next year.
Yeah, one idea that a parent mentioned to me too was, could it be where 6th and 7th grade don't get to take out their phones during recess, but that once you get to 8th grade, that's kind of like an earned privilege that they could look forward to. So that was just something that a parent had suggested as something to consider. So keep that in mind as you discuss.
No, and I will, but I'll tell you that that's very difficult to really manage because, and we try to avoid things from becoming disciplinary. There's still that whole peer pressure, right? Because all of our middle schoolers have lunch fifth period. Right. So, it's not like they're all mixed. So, like I said, we're going to review this practice and make the best decision that's going to support our learning environment.
Okay, great. So there were a few questions that came through, and you and I kind of discussed a little bit earlier, but I wanted to mention them. These have to do with curriculum, and just so you could explain to everybody that there are certain things that you're looking at. Where can they get an overview of the SEL curriculum? These, I think you mentioned that you and Mr. Keogh are talking about some of these things. Let's see. How do the curricula and the accompanying tasks and text reflect the cultures, backgrounds, and experiences of the uniquely diverse student population in Tuckahoe?
So, this is a district-wide question to really respond to. We do have a director, Dr. Keogh, who's in charge of curriculum and instruction. These are questions that I would certainly like to, engage him in and be able to report back out to families on. So I'm not really prepared to engage in that conversation right now because his work really falls into that domain. Coming in, there's many competing priorities. So certainly it's something that I will look into, follow up with him so we can get back to parents regarding both of those questions. Yeah,
and some of the things I think maybe Mr. Keogh can have a little guest spot maybe in your newsletter sometimes to talk about some of those curriculum
related issues
that he's working on, to give some transparency there.
And there are a number of things that he's working on and doing an outstanding job. So, certainly want to speak to him. Maybe we do something in the spring, to look at this. For those 7th grade parents who are listening, we are actually scheduling a 7th grade parent meeting on Monday, November 27th, to look at acceleration at the middle school level. So there's information that's going to be coming out to 7th grade parents, so they're aware of that, specifically looking at our 2 high school courses that are offered. We're looking at possibly identifying certain students for a course in the 7th grade for marking periods 3 and 4 to make sure they're fully prepared to do well in the 8th grade algebra and biology class. Okay. So that's coming, and again, more information to come, but it's going to be November 27th, which is a Monday. Okay, great.
So let's, as we're sort of starting to wrap up, but let's talk sports for a little bit. What have you been so excited about in the first couple of months of, just whether it's the middle school modified things that you've seen? We, tonight we're obviously excited about the volleyball game that's going on in the other room right now. We don't know what the score is. We heard a good report earlier, but hopefully that's still the same. Talk a little bit about your experiences with just your student athletes.
So one of the beautiful things about being in a small community is that you really get to know the students. And you know, going to the various sporting events and seeing the energy is so real, you know, and strong, you know, the pride. It is refreshing. You know, I played sports all my life. Sports helped save me. It give me discipline, give me some camaraderie, friendships. So, and I look at what happens with our sports teams. Our coaches do a phenomenal job, even in those games that we may not have prevailed and won. And our students handle themselves with class. That's very, very impressive. And then seeing students in school the following day, right? And seeing how they respond. That has been refreshing, whether or not it's at the middle school or at the high school level. That has really impressed me. But on top of that, how many students come out to support our teams, the families, you know, it is refreshing to see the high level of support for our scholar athletes. That has been refreshing. And I played sports throughout high school, including college. So it's really refreshing to see that.
Cool.
Yep.
And what about the Halloween haunted house? Were you spooked?
Well, you know, I'm not someone at this stage in my life, I don't like scary things. I don't. My children know that. My wife knows that. What amazed me was the creativity of our students and how passionate they were, our seniors in particular. And they did so much with parents supporting them within 2 hours. I mean, the second floor was transformed. You know, I mean, I was just up here a few hours ago. You know, so the creativity, it was phenomenal. Seeing how one activity can give students hope, can give students excitement, family excitement on a Friday night. So for me, when I come into events like that, I'm looking at the faces of both the spectators, the visitors, the guests, as well as our students, because their faces tell the story. So it's just so exciting to see how excited the families were. And it was not only Tuckahoe families. Right. There were families from, from certainly Eastchester and what have you, who came in to our celebration.
Yeah, the line was around the block.
It was. So it was just a great festive night. Love, the commitment of our faculty, and this is why I speak again about just what a wonderful faculty we have. So many of them are giving up their time, right? And there were many hands on deck to make sure that this was a successful event, not just for our seniors, but for our community. What was also refreshing for me, and I want to thank the PTA, because their hands are involved in so many different pieces. So leaving the event and driving by Cottle and saw a field of children. I was like, what is going on? And it was just refreshing. And to be honest, I didn't see a lot of parents. I didn't.
We were lurking along the side, keeping an eye on them.
But you know what the great thing about that said to me, and as an observer, what a trusting community we have. What a safe community that we have. That cannot be taken for granted, right? So that spoke volume to me, and it spoke about a community that cares, right? So it just said to me, I'm in the right place, right? I'm in the right place, a community that really goes above and beyond, that cares, little things matter, right? So that's what I took away from the Halloween event, as well as the event that happened at Cottle.
Okay, great. Yeah, a lot of the little kids from Cottle, even like little second graders, were coming up the street to go to the haunted house. I didn't want to go to the
back
haunted
house. Back and forth. That is correct.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the end, and this was fantastic. Thank you so much for answering all these questions for us. I know that we have tons more that we're going to be throwing at you throughout the year, but we, on behalf of everybody here, I really appreciate it.
Be gentle. There are a lot of competing priorities,
Yes, well, we understand that, and we understand that you have a big job, and we thank you for all that you're doing. Before we end, I do want to introduce our president, our PTA President, Peggy Angello, do you want to come up, Peggy, so that you're on the camera?
I know you have a lot you are looking at. You're looking at things both from your prior experience and engaging with our current staff, which is great. I appreciate all of the shout outs that you give to the PTA in every one of your newsletters. You're always recognizing our work with you, which is totally appreciated. So thank you, and thank you for this as well. Just for those who don't know, Monday night you'll be doing another presentation for 8th and 9th grade. It's not PTA sponsored, for 8th and 9th grade families, just so you can kind of continue this conversation of looking at the curriculum as you go into the high school. So that's going to be a good conversation as well. I want to thank obviously our great guest here, our host, Susan and Christine, and our communications department, because we can't do anything as a group without everybody. So I appreciate that. And thank you for coming. And if you're not a member of the PTA, we always are looking for membership, but we're actually always looking for volunteers too. So our next event for the middle school will probably, because you've got everything set for the fun nights, will be Taste of Tuckahoe, which will be in March. So we'll be looking for parent volunteers then. But thank you everyone for coming, and thank you.
Can I just, thanks so much. Just one other thing I just wanted to mention. If you email me as a parent, my goal is always to get back to you that same day, right? And that is a commitment. As a parent myself, if I email my child's teacher, I expect that, so I offer it as well. What I encourage parents to do, I'm a very active principal, hands-on principal. So if there are some concerns, please email me directly so I can respond to it accordingly. My leadership team have been doing a phenomenal job, and we do have an amazing faculty. Do we have things that we can work on? Absolutely, but it's a process. So I say, give things some time, right? But we are on a move, right? And we are going to make some changes to make sure that we're always preparing our children so they can be competitive and get into some of the top schools. Let me end saying this, I try to use many of my resources to try to come into Tuckahoe. So we had Binghamton University here on Monday, and my perspective is similar to the newsletter. I extend an invitation to all middle school families to come to that event. Why? Because it's very important for you to hear that message early so you can plan accordingly. So I'm looking to bring back Mr. Broccoli, looking to bring in some other college reps, because I just think it's very important for families to hear that message. And even if you've gone through that process, things have changed quite a bit, especially with regarding to SATs and test option. So there's a lot there. And someone like a Craig Broccoli, he's been doing this work for over 15 years. We're looking to try to organize some college trips, right? Because while there are some families certainly can get their child to a campus, some of families can't, but we want to make sure that all students have the opportunity to know what it's like on a college campus. So there are a number of things that we're trying to do. My focus is, especially as it relates to the high school that impacts the middle school, I supervise the guidance department, and we're trying to make sure things are robust at the guidance level and over-communicating, which is one of my expectations of my staff, to over-communicate. So again, I'm here to serve, and I will always give you my best.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.